Hey guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel, and in today's Coffee with Kate video, which admittedly I already drank. Oh, this is dangerous. I already drink most of my coffee. But in today's chatty video, I wanted to do a response to Cam Wolf's Is Wanting a Writing Career Enough? And I highly recommend checking out his video. I will leave a link to it down below. I always love Cam's honesty and transparency and his ability to really introspect and kind of, you know, lay out things that aren't always the most comfy to talk about. So I think for the purposes of this video, we should probably define career or writing career first. That's one of the big topics is, you know, making enough money from your writing to live off of, or making enough money from your writing and one other thing to live off of. And I think that's usually how people define career, and that the money is definitely playing a big part. It's one of those interesting things because when I think of someone's publishing or writing career, I would look at it over the span of time, and I wouldn't personally judge in theory off of how much money they made. Like if I saw someone consistently publishing short stories in anthologies or consistently writing poems and publishing poems, you know, I wouldn't be like, well, you didn't make at least $1,000 a year, so you can't consider it a career if it's something they've been doing for like 15 years or whatever, or if it's even something they've been doing for 2 years. You know, like it's just, I wouldn't judge that of others. And yet we're gonna talk about, I think, how both Cam and I, when we look at our own writing careers, the money aspect does play a huge part. And I think there's a lot of, we're not going to get into like all the capitalism stuff, right? Because that's a big part of it. That's a big part of a lot of what we do. So just like keep that little asterisk in mind as we move forward. I know it's a capitalistic mindset. I wish it was not something that weighed on my brain, but alas it does. You know, we live in a world where we need money, and the amount of time you need to put into something if you wanted to make money and all, yeah, okay, we get it, it sucks, we're gonna move on. The interesting thing I found doing my podcast, Making Money, Making Art, is I'm talking to mostly other writers about how they make their money, and I don't think I've talked to a single person yet where they were just a full-time author. So far, even the ones who are USA Today bestselling authors or had a traditional publishing contract, they were still doing other jobs or have multiple careers, or their writing is the side hustle or their job is their day job. Like I don't really, if I've not already made it clear, I don't necessarily like those terms, and I think I've seen a trend of those used less, though perhaps the feelings around them haven't been used less, just the actual terminology. But even the people who were making enough from their writing to do it full time for a while couldn't pull that off for, you know, the long run. I think there's very few authors that can actually do that, if that's how we're defining a writing career. I think there's very few authors who make enough from their writing over the entire course of, you know, 30, 40 years. How do we usually define a career? From like when you graduate high school or college or whatever into retirement. If that's how we're defining career, I think there's very few, so few authors who can make enough money from that year over year to not have to have another job. I think the hard part is, of course, those are the people that we see most frequently in airports or or displayed most prominently in bookstores or whatever, right? So it's this little mind trick that it does. But I think most of us as writers at this point, you know, can tell that I have hundreds of books, and you know, most of the authors, I have one book of theirs. Some of them I have 10 because I love them, but most of them I only have one of them. And also most of the ones where I only have one, that author only wrote one book that was traditionally published, or potentially only wrote one book that they self-published or whatever else, right? So now that we've not defined career, now that I've dismantled how I think of career, I do want to actually share some stats from the Authors Guild. This was from several years ago, but I think these stats are still very helpful to see. And we'll kind of go through some more of this. So I'll leave timestamps down below if you're like, I'm not interested in the numbers. but y'all know me on this channel, I am very interested in the numbers. So the overall mean author income from all published authors in 2017, or all published authors who are part of the guild and submitted to the survey, traditionally published, self-published, and hybrid published, was $16,889 for the author's individual income. And even in their little pyramid thing, other individual income is 64%. We have moved locations to go over stats. It was nice to see how many people actually filled out the survey too, with a base of just under 5,000 authors. So as you can see at the bottom, the full-time authors reached their median income of over 50K, starting with those in the top 30% for full-time. Hybrid and traditionally published authors had to be in the top 20%, and self-published authors had to be in the top 10% group to exceed 50K in median 2017 author related income. And you can really see the next groups have really big jumps from there, but obviously it's a much smaller percentage. I thought it was really interesting that overall there was a bit of a decline in the income from 2013, and that literary authors especially were hit by this. Also, one of the things that we joke about is, you know, or not joke about, it is known that romance readers are voracious, and that while the overall numbers were down, full-time romance or romantic suspense did not see that decline. And this might be the most interesting slide to me, was the 5-year book-related income trend. So basically figuring out those who were published 5 years ago and kind of where they're at today. Alexa Dunn has made some good videos, or has talked openly about where her debut group is at now and the kind of trends she's seen. I'm pretty sure I remember an episode, if I can figure out exactly which one, Zoraida Cordova and Danielle Clayton mentioned this as well about their debut groups, is that, you know, most of them are going to see a decline in their income, and most might not even be publishing 5 years later, you know? So 42% of authors said that their income has decreased in the 5 years. 22% did say it increased, but a quarter said it decreased a great deal. And once again, this is obviously still people who are taking the survey. I would be very curious to see those that, you know, you published one and then 5 years later you're in a much different place in your life, and you might not be publishing anymore, so you wouldn't complete the survey, right? I did also think it was interesting, and maybe this is the sort of terminology I should be using, but they have a distinction between full-time published authors and author as primary occupation, as well as part-time published authors. Now, obviously, all of these stats I'm looking at are for 2017, and while they're not current, this is like lived experiences of people who were writing and publishing and who might still be writing and publishing and in this industry, so I think it is still very helpful, and I will leave a link down below if you would like to check out even more. There is a huge document. So what do all these numbers tell us? I think they just further confirm that wanting a writing career, if you define career as something that you can live off of for multiple years and like sustain over a period of time, wanting it is just not enough, right? The thing with arts is that even actively pursuing it and trying your hardest is not a guarantee that that's gonna happen, right? It's the hard part of being a writer and wanting to get your stories out. If the goal is a monetary goal, there really is no guarantee. It really doesn't matter how hard you worked. You know, obviously hard work is part of it, but there's so much about luck and timing, and is what you love to write and what you're good at writing, is that marketable? Because it might not be. It might be a very like niche thing, and there's nothing wrong with that because there's tons of people who love the niche stuff, but you gotta, like, even if you find your niche, I'm trying to combine them. If your niche is very small, you know, it sometimes doesn't matter how wonderful a writer you are or how adored and how they devour your books, because you have like a much lower ceiling. There's a cap potentially, right? Versus these books that we think of, the kind that get turned into movies or blockbusters or something, right? Obviously, this isn't to say that people can't do it. We have tons of examples on AuthorTube of people doing it. I think one of the best examples is the Courtney Project. Courtney and her co-writer Brooke, and this is something that they're doing on a very regular interval. I will link her down below too. Cannot recommend her channel enough, but I think she would also tell you that wanting a career is not enough. The amount of work that she puts in is insane, and obviously there's still tons of writers who are trying to do the exact same thing as Courtney and Brooke. Look at Alexa Dunn for a trad pub example, and once again I think she would tell you, and I think she's made plenty of videos on it, saying wanting a writing career, if that's again how you're defining career. okay, is not enough. So now I kind of want to chat about my own personal goals, as this was a section I really loved when Cam talked about it. And I've now obviously sort of redefined what a writing career means to me, but when I first quit my corporate job, I had a much different definition. I had sort of the classic idea of I will make money exclusively off my writing and I will be able to live off of my writing, and that was my goal. And so I did set a specific goal that after 3 years, because I was quite ambitious, do not do this, I would be able to make the same amount of income from my writing as I did while at my corporate job with health insurance. I really did not understand how much it took, and that simply wanting it was not enough. I will say that, you know, a couple years after that deadline, I am much closer to achieving that, though not with the benefit of health insurance. I have to pay for the health insurance. So if I like added that up to my overall salary, you know, that would be, I'm not there, but I'm close-ish to the base salary. It is not in the amount of time I thought, and it is certainly not in the way I thought it would happen, and I had kind of pivots and jumps along the way. But if that was my original goal, my goal now has changed a lot. I think after a few years of trying that, I kind of realized that though I adore writing, and I would write even if I did not make any money from it at all, attempting to make money solely off of that was just a bad idea. It was just not for me. My camera battery died, so we're going with a different angle. You'd think after all these years of doing YouTube, I would better expect that. Thankfully, it doesn't happen too often, and yet here we are in this video. So I do think a big part of the reason that I don't want to pursue writing alone as my only means of income is because it is so difficult. If I could, you know, if I'm idealizing the world, if I could somehow guarantee that I would make enough money from writing alone, I still think I would do other things that might eventually make me money. Like, you can see those famous authors who still, when given the opportunity to do other things for money, you do more stuff than just write. I think that's part of just kind of like living in the world. I don't know if that's like inherent to someone who creates things, who just want to create a bunch of stuff, or if once again I'm just seeing the people who do that. But my goal is, or how I'm currently living, I guess I should say, is this hodgepodge of income together from a bunch of different sources, right? And that is how I would like to continue to go moving forward. And though I still have that loose income goal that I'd set so many years ago, you know, I'm at a point now where if I didn't have my partner, I could live with roommates and be fine. You know, that was not true of years before, you know, and I have documented my process and my time on this channel when I was living with my parents after quitting my corporate job. So it was a loosey-goosey windy road to even get to this point, and this point again is still not what I'd conceptualized so long ago. So you learn and adapt, I guess. What I would love though, when I think of my actual goal, is to continue this hodgepodge, but just in the way that I want to write what I want to write, I want to publish what I want to publish, I want to create YouTube videos that I want to create, I want to create podcasts that I want to create, I want to create whatever else in the future, leaving it as loosely defined as possible. You know, I want to, from all these sources, be able to continue to do that. And when I think about the other goals of what I want, I still really want to be a hybrid author. I would love to write something perfectly to market. I would love to nail it. So much that someone else, an agent and then a publisher, believed in that goal. I want that experience. I'm very curious about it. I'm gonna continue to work toward it. I want to have the flexibility to dabble in screenwriting just to learn something new, but also maybe who knows what happens. You know, I just wanna play around. But part of that dabbling is really where I found that I struggle, is the focus of it all. And I think in some ways that's my own, you know, personal shortcomings. I've talked recently about being a bad boss to myself, but also perhaps just not even being the best employee. Who knows? But an actual struggle of what's making me money now versus what I'm working on now that has the potential to make me money in the future versus things that I want to do that I know are not marketable and not commercial and likely would never make me much money, but take the same amount of time. You know, that's the thing about, we've spoken before, there's no way to know for sure. Even if you follow all of the advice, there's no guarantee. It does not matter how hard you work. and that it is not a guarantee. It of course matters how hard you work, so that you can create the best possible thing, right? But it being a guarantee of success is not how it works. It's not necessarily how it works anywhere for all kinds of like corporate, structural, systemic issues, but it's definitely not how it works in the arts. But I do have things, I do have projects that I'd love to work on that take time, as much time as a novel that I think might be more marketable, but that I know has a cap on how much money I can make. So if I'm making a little bit of money right now from my romance pen name, should I focus on the thing that is currently making me money, or should I be focusing on something like Project Death that I hope to get traditionally published that I think might be marketable? Again, no guarantee though. So like, where do you focus on the thing that's currently making money? Do you focus on the thing that has the potential to make you money? Or do you focus on the dumb idea, like I used to talk about my Scooby-Doo Meets Princess Bride story, which we can use now because I do want to work on that as a screenplay or a script in the future? Or do I focus on this where it's it's a learning opportunity? It's not something that I realistically think a lot of people outside of the very niche community would enjoy. So again, that ceiling is like all the way down here. And then how do I balance the artist's spirit? What I want to make with what, again, would potentially make me money. And that's a really hard thing. And that's part of the reason I think I decided not to make solely writing my goal. So all of this winding around is to say that, you know, is wanting it enough? I don't think so. But am I going to continue to want and continue to try in my little hodgepodgey way? Yes. My goals have changed over the years, which I think is a positive, healthy thing. And I'm sure that they will continue to change as my circumstances change too. You know, you never know if one thing takes off, what might happen, or how that can parlay into something else, or any number of things. You know, again, getting to chat with people for the podcast, for Making Money Making Art, has been really cool to see all the hard work and then the lightning strike. And that is just exceedingly cool. So I will keep putting in the hard work and just hope for my lightning strike. But please do comment down below, do you think wanting a writing career is enough? And how do you define writing career? And if you would like to make a response video to this, a response video really feels like a throwback to a YouTube of old. I would love to see it. Please let me know. Please watch Cam's video. I really enjoyed it. And thank you all so much for watching. I will see you with a new one very soon.